Let me ask you something most people are too afraid to admit out loud. What happens when the world hands you everything and you still feel absolutely nothing? You see, we live in a society that worships fame like a religion. We plaster celebrities on billboards, obsess over their wardrobes, chase every scandal like it's some sacred revelation. But behind those red carpets, behind those $1 million smiles, there are moments of deafening silence. And in that silence, some of the most famous faces you know began to question everything. Imagine standing at the peak of fame, adored, applauded, envy, only to discover you're still lost. That the parties, the press, the power, they can't fill the emptiness echoing inside, and that's where it begins. Not in a mosque, not in a book, not even in a sermon. It starts with a whisper, a restlessness, a yearning for something real. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable, because when these celebrities, yes, household names, raised in Christian homes, begin to study Islam, the world doesn't applaud. It panics, it gossips, it cancels, but they push forward, not because it's fashionable, but because it's truthful. Because, in a world full of noise, Islam offered silence. In a life of chaos, it offered clarity. You can call it controversial. You can call it radical, but what you can't call it is impulsive. These are people who had everything, and yet walked away from the illusions to embrace a reality that mainstream media never dared to explore honestly. And that, my friends, isn't weakness. That's strength most of us can't even fathom. So before you judge their decision, ask yourself, what would you do if you had everything, yet your soul was starving? Would you have the courage to follow the truth, no matter where it led? Let me tell you something bluntly. Belief is easy when it doesn't cost you anything. But when belief means turning your back on your comfort, your image, your carefully constructed brand suddenly, it's not just faith, it's bravery. That's what these celebrity reverts to Islam have shown the world. And you don't need to agree with them to admire the sheer nerve it takes to make that choice under a spotlight that never switches off. We're talking about people who were raised in Christian traditions, bathed in Western expectations, and praised for fitting the mold. They had it all: Hollywood validation, global fans, industry power, and yet they chose to walk straight into controversy, into criticism, into judgment, not because they were confused, but because they were finally clear. Now think about what that requires. To stand in front of a world trained to mock, misunderstand, and marginalize Islam and say, "This is who I am now," it's more than spiritual, it's revolutionary. Because let's face it, in today's culture, converting to Islam is not a career move. It's not a PR stunt. It's not applause worthy in the mainstream. It's a test of resolve, of inner strength, of moral courage. And here's what most people don't understand. They didn't convert for approval. They converted in spite of losing it. They knew the backlash. They expected the headlines, but they did it anyway. That's not weakness, that's unshakable conviction. So before you label them reckless or radical, ask yourself, would you dare to walk away from your comfort zone if truth was calling? Would you risk it all, not for attention, but for authenticity? Because in a world that thrives on pretending, these individuals chose to be real. And in my book, that's not just rare, it's astonishingly powerful. Let's cut through the polite pretense. Islam has been villainized in the West for decades. We've been spoon-fed a narrative that Islam is rigid, that it's extreme, that it's incompatible with modern life. But here's the twist no one saw coming. Some of the very icons who once embodied Western ideals are now choosing Islam. That alone should stop you in your tracks, because when a celebrity, someone celebrated by Hollywood, followed by millions, raised in a Christian tradition, stands up and says, "Islam gave me peace," it doesn't just raise eyebrows, it challenges the entire system of misinformation we've been fed. It doesn't fit the script. And that's precisely why it matters. This isn't about rebellion, it's about revelation. These people aren't converting in secrecy. They're doing it publicly, And each time they do, the media narrative begins to crack. Suddenly, Islam isn't just the other. It's something thoughtful, something transformative, something people of intellect and influence are gravitating toward, not out of pressure, but out of profound choice. And let me be very clear, these conversions are not just personal stories. They're cultural earthquakes. They're evidence that people are starting to see through the lies. That beyond the politics, beyond the propaganda, there's something in Islam so powerful, so grounding, that even the most visible faces in the world are willing to reshape their lives around it. So, if these celebrities armed with resources, surrounded by options, found something in Islam worth facing public scrutiny, for then maybe the issue isn't with the religion. Maybe it's with the lens we've been forced to look through, and maybe, just maybe, it's time we started asking why we fear the very thing that's clearly bringing others peace. Let me say something uncomfortable: success doesn't guarantee happiness, and no one proves that better than the celebrities who had everything, yet still felt completely, devastatingly empty. The private jets, the global tours, the adoration of millions. It all becomes background noise when your soul starts asking deeper questions. That's when the truth begins to haunt you. That's when the illusion cracks. Now imagine reaching the top of the world, only to discover it's hollow. Imagine signing autographs while silently breaking inside. That's the reality many celebrities face. And it's the exact moment where many of them began exploring Islam. Not because of pressure, not because of trend, but because something was missing, and fame couldn't fill it. Islam doesn't offer glamour. It doesn't hand out applause. What it gives, quietly, profoundly, is purpose. It provides structure in a chaotic world, discipline in a life ruled by indulgence. It anchors you when everything around you is designed to sweep you away. And these celebrities, for all their power, realized one thing: they were unanchored. They didn't convert because of crisis. They converted because of clarity, because when they finally stripped away the performances, the public image, the scripted interviews, what was left was a soul starving for direction. And Islam didn't just answer their questions, it calmed them. So next time you judge someone's conversion from a place of ignorance, consider this: if people who have tasted every pleasure the world has to offer are still choosing Islam, what does that say about what they found? Maybe peace doesn't come from wealth or worship by the masses. Maybe peace is found when the noise fades and the truth finally speaks. And maybe that truth was always waiting to be heard. Here's the reality most people can't stomach. When a public figure embraces Islam, they know exactly what's coming. The headlines, the backlash, the trolls, and still they press forward, not just accepting this faith quietly behind closed doors, but wearing it like armor in the public arena. That isn't weakness, that's defiance with dignity. These aren't people hiding their prayers, they're posting them. They're talking about fasting during Ramadan, reading the Quran, saying the Shahada in front of millions. And the world watches with either awe or confusion. But make no mistake, it takes courage to stand tall in the face of the storm, especially when you know that storm is coming from all sides. Now ask yourself this: why would someone with influence, with access, with the comfort of silence, choose to go loud about something so controversial? Because they're not interested in likes, they're interested in truth. Because when something transforms your life so completely, the natural instinct isn't to whisper it, it's to share it. And in doing so, they've sparked something extraordinary. They've become mirrors for people who are lost, who are questioning, who feel isolated in their faith journey. Because let's face it, when someone you admire publicly embraces a belief system you are told to fear, it forces you to rethink everything. They didn't ask to be icons of faith, but in their honesty, in their public devotion, in their refusal to shrink, these celebrities have become exactly that. Not perfect, not infallible, but brave, brave enough to be real in a world addicted to fake, and that kind of bravery, that inspires millions more than a hit song or a blockbuster film ever could. Let's stop pretending this is just about celebrities. It's not. This is about you, because when someone who's lived the life you've been taught to chase money, fame, global success, says it wasn't enough, that's not just a personal confession. That's a challenge to your entire definition of happiness. You sit there watching from behind a screen, maybe doubting, maybe curious, maybe scared to question your own path. But deep down, something resonates. If they, with all the access and options in the world, chose to walk away from the spotlight and toward submission, to God, to truth, to Islam, what's stopping you from at least exploring the same road? We often wait for some grand moment of crisis before making a change, but what if your sign is already here? What if their story was never about them? What if it was meant to be a mirror reflecting everything you've buried under routine, distraction, or fear? These aren't fairy tales, they're real lives transformed in real time, and the most powerful part, they didn't wait until everything was broken. They acted when everything looked perfect from the outside, but felt painfully wrong on the inside. You don't need fame to find peace. You don't need a global platform to seek truth. You need honesty, grit, the guts to ask, am I really fulfilled? And if the answer is no, then maybe, just maybe, it's time you stopped chasing more and started chasing meaning. So, while the world claps for illusion, dare to look at what's real. Their stories didn't end with success, they began with surrender. And if that message stirred something in you, don't ignore it. That whisper inside you, that's your turning point waiting to be heard.